Hello everyone and welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the NBA DFS Core Pick video for today, Thursday, January 4th. If you are joining me for the very first time, first of all, welcome in. Second of all, this is how today's video will be structured just in general. It's going to be a little bit different today, so we're going to go over a recap of yesterday's picks, see how they ultimately ended up turning out. We'll go over to RotoWire, talk about the injuries in play for today. It's only a 2-game main slate, so with it being less than 3 games in total, we'll be doing a little bit of a slate overview as opposed to a traditional core pick video, and this does not look like a very fun slate overall. So I would recommend that you either play light or you kind of mass entry and kind of mix and match a whole bunch tonight. Those would be the 2 ways that I would recommend approaching tonight's slate, as it's just going to be a very interesting one. A lot of different things could end up happening, and we're relying on a lot of guys we probably wouldn't rely on other slates just in general. But without further ado, we'll get into that recap of yesterday's picks. We'll start off on the DraftKings side. We had Donovan Mitchell, $9,500. Looking for at least 48 out of him, got to 40.75. So technically he was a mess. He only played 24 minutes in this game as it was a massive blowout. You know, if he goes out there, he plays 36 minutes, he easily outperforms his price tag. But thank you, Washington Wizards, for giving us a blowout yesterday. Then at shooting guard, we went back to Josh Giddey yesterday, and he was $5,900. Unfortunately, only got to 20.75. He was a mess. Only played 22 minutes in this game, mainly scored the ball. So just wasn't that great overall yesterday. You know, maybe we go with somebody else, but, you know, he had been seeing an uptick in minutes, so definitely did like him at that price tag. You know, if he was going to go out there, play 27, 28 minutes, once again, probably would pay off closer to that price tag. Then a small forward, we went with OG Anunoby, $5,600. Looked like one of the better value plays yesterday, so looking for at least 28 of them. He got to 28 exactly, so he was a hit. And then at power forward, we had Jalen Johnson, $6,300, looking for at least 32 out of him, got to 49.75, so he was a really good hit on yesterday's slate, kind of the one lone standout in terms of the core picks. And then at center, we had Derek Lively, $5,500, looking for at least 28 out of him, got to 21. He was a miss, unfortunately. He played 19 minutes in this game and unfortunately got hurt. So can't really say too much about that. It was just a really sad story, especially because he was a guy that I did like on both sites yesterday, and he was playing really well in the 19 minutes that he actually did play yesterday. So probably needed some other really good picks yesterday on DraftKings. A little bit of a weird slate overall, so you're going to have that happen every once in a while. But on the FanDuel side, we had Josh Giddey, is who I ultimately went to at point guard, $6,300. Was looking for 31, 32 out of him, got 19.6, so obviously he was a miss. Only 22 minutes, mainly scored the ball once again. At shooting guard, we had Jaden Ivey, so he was coming off a really strong performance versus Utah last time around. $6,200, looking for 31 out of him, only got to 13.2. He was a miss in this game. He only played 22 minutes in this game and mainly just scored the ball yesterday. So Alec Burks behind him played out of his mind, scored 27 real-life points, so that really just affected Jaden Ivey overall, where Burks got a couple extra minutes, and then it killed off Ivey's value just in general. So there was a little unfortunate there. Pretty high-scoring game, though, and he was kind of one of the pieces that did not ultimately end up panning out in that high-scoring game. Then a small forward early in the day, we had Benedict Mathurin, but once we got the news that Bruce Brown was playing, I said you could go to Jalen Johnson here, $6,900, looking for at least 35 out of him. Got to 51.9 on the FanDuel side, so he was a really good hit once again. If you went to Benedict Mathurin, still you were looking for 26, 27 out of him. Got to 20.7, so he was a miss, played 25 minutes, and mainly just scored the ball in those minutes that he did end up playing. And then at power forward, we had Jeremy Grant here, $7,500, looking for at least 38 out of him. Only got to 11.2, so this was really unfortunate. He was a miss, 20 minutes in this game, mainly scored the ball, and was a pretty big blowout as well. So the Trailblazers just kind of rolled over and died yesterday. So if, you know, he plays his normal run out there, if he plays at a decent clip, he's going to pay off at this price tag overall. And he was a guy that drew a little bit of ownership yesterday as well. And then last but not least, we had Derek Lively, once again, $6,300, looking for at least 32 out of him. Got 25.8. He was a miss. Technically, he did have a fourth block that got taken away when I was kind of looking yesterday. I seen that he had the injury tag, so I popped over to FanDuel. At that point in time, he had 4 blocks. They knocked it down to 3. So kind of unfortunate there, you know. Even in those 19 minutes that he did play, he played really well in those 19 minutes. So if he goes out there, plays 30, you know, 28, 30, he's going to outperform this price tag pretty easily. But with that being said, you know, really hit or miss day yesterday. You're going to have that with NBA DFS. Unfortunately, we have to follow up the hit or miss day with a pretty poor looking slate to start off. Maybe it gets a little better as the day moves along, but only 2 games out there. We're going to have to play some guys that we typically wouldn't want to play on most slates, though. But with that being said, we'll move over to RotoWire and talk about those injuries in play for tonight's slate. So there is one lone team on the back-to-back. That is the Milwaukee Bucks tonight. So we do not have their injury report at this point in time. It is assumed that Chris Middleton will be out for this game since he played yesterday. There was kind of a debate whether he played yesterday or today. So since he played yesterday, probably going to rest on the second half of the back-to-back. I believe Jay Crowder is out once again, and then AJ Green did sit out yesterday's game, so we'll see what's up with him. I know Pat Connaughton was questionable yesterday due to illness, so I thought maybe they play Chris Middleton yesterday and then give Pat Connaughton the night off, and then Connaughton play tonight, and then Middleton would be out tonight. But he did ultimately end up playing last night, so we'll see if he is ultimately good to go tonight as well. And then for the San Antonio Spurs, we got Zach Collins out once again, and then Malachi Brandon listed as doubtful due to an ankle injury. We'll see who ultimately ends up starting for the Spurs team because they've ran out a lot of different lineups out there. There's a lot of different directions they can go just in general. But a guy that's probably going to benefit the most with Brandon out, probably going to be like Trey Jones and Blake Wesley. Blake Wesley's a guy that, unfortunately, we're going to probably have to play in a pretty good amount on this slate overall just because he's cheap and he's getting some minutes for the Spurs team overall. Then we move over to the Denver Nuggets. So the King Kerr's out once again. He's going to be out for quite a while still. And then Reggie Jackson listed as probable to play tonight, just kind of playing that backup point guard role either way. And then for the Golden State Warriors, Draymond Green's obviously suspended, so he's out. And then Gary Payton II is out once again. So going to see a little bit of an uptick in minutes for Moses Moody. Maybe he's another value play that we get to tonight and kind of hopefully, he plays 16, 18 minutes and kind of pays off in those minutes. That's going to be the name of the game for the most part tonight. But with that being said, that's the quick little rundown on all the injuries in play for today. Mainly we're just watching that Bucks news. It's safe to assume that Reggie Jackson's going to play and Malachi Brandon is probably going to miss. If anything else does pop up throughout the day, we'll leave it down in the comments below, as well as the starting lineups as they do get announced tonight as well. But with that being said, we'll get moved over to DraftKings and talk about our slate breakdown over there. So on the DraftKings side, we're going to start off at the point guard position. So we're looking here. Damian Lillard is $9,300. I prefer him more on FanDuel, but you can take some shots here. It's more of a little bit of upside play, but it is a pace-up spot versus the Spurs, so this should be a pretty back-and-forth game. There's also the chance that maybe Milwaukee blows out the Spurs tonight. If you had to pick one of these two games to be a little bit more competitive, it's probably going to be that Denver Nuggets and Golden State Warriors game just in general, but I do like the upside that Lillard could present. Maybe a little bit overpriced at this point in time, though. Steph Curry, $9,000, coming off a pretty strong performance. I do like him tonight. A little bit of pace down spot versus the Nuggets just in general, though. Jamal Murray on the opposite side at $8,000. Interesting GPP option there. He's playing pretty well as of late. A little bit of pace up spot here as well. Devin Vassell at $6,700. He's got that point guard, shooting guard eligibility, so he's going to be an interesting piece tonight, especially depending on who starts for that San Antonio Spurs team. Maybe takes on a little bit more of a facilitator role. Chris Paul, if he starts, is going to be kind of interesting at $6,400. If you get a good game out of him, it's probably going to help your lineup. If you get a not so good game out of him, it's just going to not help your lineup at all. So he's just kind of at that price tag where he's kind of appropriately priced, but he could outperform it here and there every once in a while. Bojanski behind him, he has eligibility at point guard and shooting guard, $6,100 coming off the bench probably once again tonight. So more of a GPP play than anything. Trey Jones for the Spurs could be a little bit interesting if he starts tonight. If he starts tonight and he gets 28, 30 minutes, he's going to look like a decent option at $5,100. But if he's still coming off the bench with Malachi Brandon out, which is a thing that could very much happen, although I don't get why they want to bench Trey Jones so bad this year because he is a good facilitator and a good guy in terms of assist-to-turnover ratio, but that's a story for another day. He could have some upside on tonight's slate overall. Brandon's going to be out most likely, and Reggie Jackson's probable, so not really getting to either of those two guys. Blake Wesley, like I said here, $4,000. He's been playing a little bit as of late. He probably gets a bump up with no Malachi Brandon tonight. Not a guy that I love, but for this slate, he's a guy that we're probably going to end up playing a little bit of. Then we move down to Campaign, not really getting too many minutes at this point in time, so it's kind of hard to get to him. Mainly if you're getting to him, you're probably betting on that Milwaukee blowout tonight where he gets a couple extra minutes, maybe he gets up to 16, 18, and maybe pays off in those minutes that he does actually play. And then after him, there's not much else down here that we would consider playing at this point in time. Then we move over to shooting guard. Already talked about Steph Curry. I assume Chris Middleton is going to be out tonight. We talked about Vassell and Podziemski. Klay Thompson at $5,900. I don't mind here. It's a decent price tag for him. He could definitely outperform it, and he could definitely underperform it based on what he's done as of late. So if he has a good shooting night, he's probably going to be a guy you need in your lineup. If he has a poor shooting night, he's going to be a guy that you wish was never in your lineup, just in general. Then we move down to Malik Beasley. He's just kind of an upside type of play there. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's not terrible at $5,000, but really hasn't done too much at this point in time so far this season. We got Champagnie behind him, who $4,700. If he starts, maybe he gets a couple extra minutes with Brandon out tonight. He's a guy that could be kind of interesting, three-point shooting, blocks, steals, stuff like that. Probably looks a little bit better on FanDuel, though. Christian Brown coming off the bench, coming off a pretty strong game at $4,200. If you really want to get there, you probably could. Otherwise, we're getting down here to guys like Marshawn Beauchamp, who played 21 minutes last night with both Pat Connaughton and Chris Middleton playing. He actually had 7 more minutes than Connaughton. So if he gets the start tonight, he's going to be pretty interesting at $3,500. Not a great fantasy point per minute guy, but at $3,500, if he goes out there, plays 26 minutes or more, he's going to be one of the better value options on tonight's slate overall. You can take some shots on Julian Strother, not playing quite as much as he was for that little stretch of time, though, but shooting guard, small forward, eligible there. Justin Holiday's there, but he's really not doing too much as of late. So Moses Moody would be the last guy we get to down here, $3,100. I think there is some consideration for him tonight, especially with no Gary Payton II. Then we move over to small forward. Once again, Chris Middleton probably out. Keldon Johnson coming off the bench, probably still $6,900. Who knows? Maybe he slides back into that starting lineup with no Brandon, but he's played pretty well off the bench. It's a decent spot for his Milwaukee. Don't mind getting to him there. And then we got Michael Porter Jr., $6,600. Looks like a pretty fine value at that. So if you're making a little bit more of a balanced build, maybe he's a guy that you get to just a little bit more in general. We get down to Andrew Wiggins, $5,200. As of late, he's had a couple better games, so more of a GPP upside type of play there if you want to go that direction. And then Pat Connaughton, if you think it's not Marshawn Beauchamp tonight, if you think it's Pat Connaughton getting 26 minutes or more and paying off in those minutes, he could definitely warrant some consideration at $4,300. Obviously, we'll keep an eye out on him to see if that illness is still bugging him today. And then after that, it's pretty much what we already talked about at that small forward position, so we'll get moved over to power forward. Power forward Giannis is at the top. He's $12,000. He's going to look like a pretty interesting play tonight. It's a pretty good matchup versus the Spurs. But the big question is, how do you pay up for him tonight? Because he's like the one lone pay up option or the one true pay up option on tonight's slate overall. Victor Wembanyama behind him, $8,300. As long as the game's not a blowout, if he's getting closer to 30 minutes, he's going to look like a pretty interesting play. I do like him a little bit more on DraftKings as opposed to FanDuel, where he's like $1,400 more. And then, we get down to like Bobby Portis. Really not too interested in him, not playing a lot of minutes as of late. But if you get that blowout run out of the Bucks, maybe he plays a little bit more. Not too interested in Aaron Gordon in his return. Wasn't that great. Didn't play a ton of minutes. Jeremy Sohan, if you want to get to him at $5,600, does make a little bit of sense there, especially with no Brandon. Definitely the potential for more minutes tonight. I like Jonathan Kuminga at $5,300. The upside that he could present, obviously, he does have some pretty strong downside at the same time as well. So maybe you want to play one of him or Wiggins in a decent chunk of your lineups tonight. Probably not playing both them together, though. And then let's see what we got here. Dario Saric, $4,100. If you want to take a dart throw there, he's had decent games so far this season, although he's really been ticking down as of late. So that would probably be the last guy we get to at that power forward position. So we'll get moved over to center. So center at the top, we got Nikola Jokic. I probably should have said, when we're talking about Giannis, that's another reason that is so hard to get to him, is you got Nikola Jokic for $400 cheaper, and they pretty much have the same upside. And if you look at what they've done so far in the season, Jokic actually averages more points. After that, we get down to Brook Lopez, $6,200. You can take some shots here and there. He's playing pretty big minutes as of late. Trace Jackson Davis, if he's in that starting lineup once again, he could be pretty interesting at $5,600. Still kind of need a little bit more of a bigger game out of him. The minutes just weren't quite there last time out, though. DeAndre Jordan's actually playing pretty well in limited minutes, so if you really wanted a pay down option in him, you could look at him, I guess. Kevon Looney, if you hope that he kind of plays more minutes than he's been playing as of late, especially going against Jokic, there is a chance for that, but maybe a little bit more risky, especially with Trace Jackson Davis starting as of late. Then we got Mamu, who is $3,800. Was pretty good 2 games ago. Then last game only played 2 or 3 minutes, so probably a little bit more risky than we like to get to. Dominic Barlow is the other center option they kind of had there at $3,700. Played pretty well last time out, so kind of pick your poison which guy you think they're going to go to as that backup center, and that's kind of where you'd be at for that. But that's kind of a quick little overview for the DraftKings side for today. We'll get moved over to FanDuel and kind of do the same thing over there as well. So on the FanDuel side, once again, we have the point guard position. I like Steph Curry quite a bit here at $8,700. $300 cheaper on DraftKings, but you don't get the 3-point bonuses at the same time as well. A little bit of pace down spot for Denver, but he's going to look pretty good, pretty interesting. And then we got Damian Lillard, who's a lot cheaper on FanDuel tonight. So if you want to get to him, FanDuel's probably going to be the easier option to get to him. And obviously you have to play 2-point guards over here just in general. Jamal Murray, I'm kind of off of on FanDuel at $8,500. You kind of need more of a ceiling game out of him just in general. It could happen. You probably should have him if you're playing multiple lineups, but if you're playing 3 or less lineups, I'm probably not getting to him quite as much. Chris Paul is fairly priced. If he goes out there, plays 30 minutes in that starting lineup, could easily outperform this price tag, but I feel like he's pretty fairly priced at this point in time. Jeremy Sohan, with no Malachi Brandon, once again, there is opportunities for more minutes. You can play at point guard and power forward, so that makes him a little bit more useful on tonight's slate. Not a bad price tag at the same time. Trey Jones ultimately just depends if he's in that starting lineup. He could have some more upside just in general. Probably not getting a campaign once again, $4,100 unless you're betting on that Milwaukee blowout. And then after him, it just doesn't get too pretty at the point guard position. Moving over to the shooting guard position, we got Devin Vassell here once again, $7,200. So he's a little bit more of a GPP upside type of play on FanDuel as opposed to like $6,700 on DraftKings. Definitely could get there, but definitely could underwhelm at the same time. Pojenski at $6,300. I'm not getting there too much on FanDuel. It's a couple extra points, but at the same time, I don't think he's a guy that I want to get to too often. Klay Thompson's also $5,900 on FanDuel, so on both sites, he looks pretty interesting at $5,900. Obviously, if he has a big game, he's going to be somebody you need in your lineup. For Malik Beasley, $4,900, just kind of that upside play once again. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is a little bit cheaper here. Hasn't really done too much this year, but is a cheap, viable option at the very least. Christian Braun, like we said on DraftKings, played a little bit better in their most recent game if you want to get to him. Then Pat Connaughton's probably a little bit more interesting on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, where he's only $4,000, and he's got shooting guard, small forward eligibility as opposed to, I believe, small forward and powered eligibility. He is going to be somebody that I do have some interest in. If he's in that starting lineup, he's going to look even better. And then we got Blake Wesley down here, $3,900. Been playing a little bit of minutes as of late. There is no Malachi Branham, so should have some more minutes available at the very least. Whether or not he gets those kind of remains to be seen. Then we also have Moses Moody at $3,800. Don't mind going to him with no Gary Payton in the second out there tonight. Moving over to the small forward position, we're going to just start with Keldon Johnson, $7,000. Probably coming off the bench still. Don't mind him there. He's played pretty well as of late as well. And then Michael Porter Jr., $6,800. I think he's a very viable option, probably appropriately priced at this point in time, but could have a little bit of upside here and there as well. Kuminga's a little bit harder to get to on FanDuel, although you can play him at small forward and power forward, $6,000. There is some upside to be had there, but the minutes could be a little bit of concern. Andrew Wiggins, $5,200, I believe, on both sites now, so could be a little bit interesting there, more of a GPP option than anything. And then move down to Champ Penny once again, $4,400. Like I said, I like him a little bit better on FanDuel, where he gets rewarded a little bit more for steals and blocks. Obviously, he can hit a 3 here and there every once in a while. If he's in that starting lineup, if he plays 22, 24 minutes, could ultimately end up playing off at this price tag just in general. And then we get down to Julian Strawther, just hasn't played quite as much as of late, but if you want to take a shot there at $3,900, you could. Marshawn Beauchamp's probably the next guy really worth talking about at $3,800. If he starts in place of Chris Middleton, he's going to look pretty good. Played 21 minutes last night. If he gets 26 or more tonight, could ultimately end up paying off at this price tag rather easily. But that's kind of what we have in terms of small forwards. We'll get back up to the top here. We'll go over to the power forwards, which I'm not as crazy about on FanDuel today. So we got Giannis at the top, $12,100. Still very hard to get to just because of who else you have to play in your lineup to do it. And then we got Victor Wembanyama. He is $9,500. So $1,200 more. I believe I said $1,400 more on the DraftKings side, but still quite a bit more expensive. But part of that's because of the steals and blocks that he's gotten on the season, and you get the extra points on FanDuel just in general. We already talked about Keldon Johnson, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, $6,400. I'm just not getting there today. I think he's still going to be kind of limited, kind of affected by, his dog injuries, if that's what you want to call it at this point in time. Trace Jackson Davis, $5,700. Some upside there if he ends up starting, plays decent-sized minutes. Bobby Portis doesn't look quite as bad on FanDuel. It's $5,600. You're still probably betting on a little bit more of that blowout game just in general because he hasn't been playing quite as many minutes as of late. Darius Saric, if you want to get there, $4,500 does have a little bit upside. We talked about Mamu and Eric Barlow a little bit on DraftKings. Whoever plays kind of that backup center role should have some value on tonight's slate, so maybe mixing and matching some of them does make some sense. Barlow is power forward only on FanDuel, and Mamu is power forward and center. So a little bit of options to be had there. Maybe get into some Barlow tonight, and probably not feeling the greatest about it. Nikola Jokic at $11,900, probably your preferred pay-up option between him and Giannis, and the fact that you can play him at the center position, which sometimes center is not the greatest on FanDuel or a little bit overpriced in general. Brook Lopez is all the way up to $7,300. He's playing pretty big minutes, but you kind of have to hope for that big block game out of him to really pay off at that price tag, since he's not that much of a rebounder nowadays, especially with the team that's around him. Talked about Trace Jackson Davis. We talked about Bobby Portis already. DeAndre Jordan, like I said on DraftKings, he's played pretty well in limited minutes off the bench, but $4,700, don't think I'm getting there. Then we got Kevon Looney. If he ends up starting tonight, he actually looks a lot interesting at $4,300, but probably going to assume that it's Trace Jackson Davis once again. But if Trace Jackson Davis gets like in foul trouble or something against Jokic, maybe they turn to Looney and he looks all right in that situation. We already talked about Mamu. And that's pretty much it for the center positions. So that's a quick little rundown on FanDuel as well. Hopefully this helped you as you're building out your lineups today. Like I said, really hard to do core picks when it is only a 2-game slate just in general. But just kind of want to give my insights on the slate overall. As always, if you have any questions related to NBA DFS, be sure to drop them down in the comments below and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. Also, be sure to let me know that if those questions are more FanDuel or DraftKings specific, just so I can best help you as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then, as always, I'll be listing all the injury news throughout the day. Probably not going to be too much of it in general today since there's only 2 games, but I will list the starting lineups as they do get announced as well, even though we do have that pretty big gap between the start times of both these games. But with that being said, if you are brand new, checking my channel out for the very first time or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. It helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now we have NBA DFS Core Pick videos Monday through Friday. This will be the last week for the NFL DFS player pool video, which haven't been able to get to the last couple of weeks, but it looks like I have Friday off of work, so we'll be recording that at some point on Friday to either come out late Friday night or early Saturday morning, so definitely be on the lookout for that. And then also be sure to check out my NFL DFS cheat sheets for both FanDuel and DraftKings in terms of the main slates. Helps condense that player pool down just a little bit more. And that is up on the sports affiliation website. And then last but not least, if you are interested in sports betting, if you're interested in prop betting whatsoever, be sure to check out the links and promo codes down in the description below for BetUS, Prize Picks, and Parlay Play. If you are a brand new user to any one of those 3 sites, when you make your initial deposit, you will get a first match deposit bonus. For Prize Picks and Parlay Play, it's 100% of your deposit up to $100. And then for BetUS, it's 125% of your initial deposit up to $2,500. So some pretty great opportunities to be had out there. If you have any other additional questions related to sports betting or prop betting in general, feel free to reach out to me, whether it's down in the comments or on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport, and be more than happy to help you with that journey as well. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have for today's video. Definitely do appreciate each and every one of you tuning in. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in NBA DFS tonight.